ready to fly.
Oh,
You ready to fly?
Yep.
I like
You got a
that. He said
clapper?
that for me.
All right, so we're good.
Yep.
All right, so let's start with the most recent development.
Yes.
From where you sit, what the heck happened at the GOP convention?
It was great. We made history in terms of having the largest number of delegates ever to attend a convention, right around 2,000, just over 2,000, and the delegate count was around 1,839. And then, well, to be specific, the exciting part would have been when the Washington State Republican Party Candidate Committee held a meeting the night before the actual start of the convention, and they decided in a vote that they were going to disqualify me. And they announced that the next day after the convention started. And as soon as those words came out, the convention delegates, by a majority, voiced their disposition and statement. And the chairman, Jim Walsh, did a masterful job in maintaining order, and people's voices were heard, because that's what Jim did. He says, let's hear what you have to say. And people approached the mic in an orderly fashion, and they shared what they were thinking. And someone made a motion to amend the report to say we will restore the convention to its full intent, to have both Dave Reichert and Semi Bird on the ballot, and then we would take a vote. That's the fair and equitable thing to do, and that's what it ended up being. And then we won by a supermajority vote of 72% in a vote of the delegates, and it was wonderful. But it was good experience.
Dave Reichert has called it chaos.
Yeah.
Do you agree that it was chaos?
No, not at all. I mean, it's imagine the conventions that you see on TV, the national conventions, and it's loud, and people are either for a candidate, or maybe not for a candidate. But when that report came out, people stood and said no, And then again, Chairman Walsh said, well, let's voice your thoughts, approach the mic, and that's what they did. So it wasn't chaos. It was passion. It was real. It was live, and it was free, but it was orderly, and it was quite beautiful. And I would say this for the delegates who were there to support Dave, they were wonderful as well. They voiced their thoughts and what they wanted, and they approached the mic as well. And that's what this is all about. It's not stifling voices or censoring opinions. It's listening and learning, and then leaving it up to the people to deciding, and that's what happened.
In this process they were talking about, again, according to the Reichert campaign, they brought up the criminal record related to bank larceny, the bankruptcy on your record, that you were once charged with felony theft, that all of that baggage should exclude you from getting the nomination. How do you answer to those past convictions, the past bankruptcy?
So quantitatively, and the smoke and mirrors of just even to say convictions, when you hear that and you lay it out, just that sounds like, oh my gosh, this guy, he has a what do they call it, a rap sheet. I have one conviction for a misdemeanor, which is wrong. Guilty for charge, you're convicted for a reason. And when you say bank larceny, there was no theft of money. No money is taken. It was a credit line of $1,800. I used my father's credit. It was wrong. I could say that a million more times. My father forgave me. He loved me. He found Christ. There was a bitterness that drove that action. I'm not justifying it. But the beauty in all this was that he forgave me and came back into my life after decades of being apart. And at the end of the day, I was the executor of his estate, and he passed away proud of his son. But one conviction, 31 years ago, criteria of the background check for all candidates, Dave included, 15 years. Have you ever had a felony? Semi Bird, no, I never had a felony in my entire life. So let's get that clear. Bankruptcy within the last 15 years. Have you ever had a bankruptcy in the last 15 years? No. I have an 818 credit score, 0 judgments, 0 collections. It's perfect credit. I passed every aspect of the background investigation as per their criteria, but the Reichert campaign and their action group, Restore Washington, has been targeting me. One of their largest donors, Steve Gordon, paid for a website dedicated to slander and libel against myself and my family. And that's what you're seeing. And now Dave Reichert is actually using those talking points. And he's resorted to calling names Semi Bird is a crook. He's a snake oil salesman. And when I was asked by another reporter how do I respond to that, I said, well, I've always referred to Dave as a gentleman. And I would hope that at some point in time he would find that again, because I will never lower myself to calling names to another candidate or anybody else for that matter. The truth is there for the people to see it. But there's a lot of people in this city and in a lot of communities that may have had problems in their past, and this governor candidate and this future governor will not label a person as something bad for the rest of their life. Redemption, forgiveness. People who want to move on and better themselves in Washington State should always have a pathway. That's what I'll represent, and I have the experience to do so because I've lived it. Maybe not in prison, maybe not with addiction, maybe not as a felon or a convict, but even that misdemeanor gives me the compassion and understanding and empathy that we must always give a person a pathway for forgiveness and a second chance.
So with all of that said, why run for governor? Why that office?
Oh my goodness. With all the things that are wrong with Washington State and all the things that are beautiful about Washington State, we need someone who has a mindset, who has the leadership character and disposition in times like this, times of adversity, where you have to make a character decision. We need someone who will make the right decision. The decision to find compassion and empathy for all citizens of the state, not just those who are their big money donors, not just those who call them up and say, we will bankroll you, we will support you, we will leverage all the politicians to support you, but a calling to serve something greater than myself. That is what's missing in politics. So that's why me. Someone maybe in the past, distant 30, 40 years ago have made mistakes. I think that qualifies me to represent those citizens who have been forgotten, left behind, and ignored for too many years. So this is an opportunity for us to bring unity and to bring a continuity of love across all groups of citizens and communities, diverse communities of Washington State. And we made history also. Last week, as you know, we became the first Black American ever to be endorsed and nominated by any party in the state of Washington, which shows the greatness of our nation. A nation, this melting pot that represents all diverse communities. American nonetheless.
When did you make that decision, though, that you wanted to hold a state office? Was it during the pandemic? Was it before the pandemic?
I would say towards the end. I and my wife, because we do everything together, she's my life, we had never had anything political. It would be quite the opposite. Respect to our politicians. I'm not a career politician, nor do I ever want to be one. This is literally, I feel, is a calling to serve, again, something important. And as I said before, greater than myself. I saw it. I saw it with the lockdowns, the mandates, the restrictions, the devastation of our economy, the discourse along racial lines, along societal lines. And I said, we must be better. We must be better, we must do better. And if not, again, us who, if not now when, as they say. But we need someone to represent the community, diverse communities, not more of the same, not the political elite, and not the donor class. We need someone to represent us, we the people. And I said, well, I'm gonna do it, because I'm not gonna run away from my state that I love and where I was raised. That was the choice, and here I am.
It's interesting you talked about the mandates because I think some people have seen headlines, the fact that you were on the Richland School Board, that you had voted the way you did regarding mask mandates. You were later recalled for that. You have since said that you wear that recall like a badge of honor. Why do you wear that like a badge of honor?
Yeah, we had the highest suicide rate of our children and our students. A mandate's not a law. I didn't make that decision or that motion for political reasons, and I stated that when I made the motion. It was to protect our children. It was to give voice to those parents so that they had a choice in determining if their child was suffering with anxiety, which led to depression and, as we know, again, suicide, or those special needs children who had trouble struggling with wearing that mask. The fact that we had lost learning, that we know scientifically that reading lips helps us to interpret and process information. I checked with the health department director before I made that decision. I checked with all of the legal scholars that were available, and they said we were within our rights to do so. And then I made a decision that would be equitable for our community, to give voice to those who did not have a voice, once again. And that's where my heart was, to do what was best for our children and to give voice to those parents who are the primary stakeholders in their children's upbringing. And I stand by it. And that would be the statement, a badge of honor, because we need to be honorable in a representation of all citizens and all communities.
I think you've answered this a little bit, but there's going to be a lot of comparisons between you and Dave Reichert now on the Republican side after we get through filing week. He's got a lengthy history that I think people know about on the west side of the state, maybe not as much on the east side of the state. But for our viewers, how do you think you're different than Dave Reichert?
Oh my goodness, in so many ways, but then again, we could say there's similarities there as well. We talked about the disposition and how we navigate adversity. When faced with adversity, I lean in. I don't run away. When faced with challenge or criticism, I lean in and I face it and I answer it and we discuss it and we find common ground and we have a discussion, just as Socrates would call, and we learn from one another. I think when it came to the mandates, I took a stance to say we must understand the constitutional rights of our citizens and lead with the Constitution as a foundation of our governance, not our political and personal views, but what does the law say? What does the Constitution say? And that is something that's important. We were opposite sides of that, obviously. I think also having a diverse background and the skill sets to actually do the job, not just to say who has more money or name brand recognition, because that would say that every donor class group or political class group can determine the state of politics for Washington State and our nation forever, and that the people's voice really doesn't matter anymore. It's who they choose to be their candidate. Well, in America, in a constitutional republic, it's we the people who choose who are our candidate, and it is, as Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, of the people, by the people, for the people. So the difference is simply this: I'm what you would call a Reconstruction Republican, to say that the dream is not yet fulfilled, that we have communities who have been forgotten and ignored, that there is nothing wrong with acknowledging mistakes of the past, but looking to the future and not forgetting that there are people who are struggling economically, socially, that there's a disparity of wealth in our state and in our nation. Jobs, opportunity, equality, civil rights, all of these things still matter today more than ever, and we need to be talking about that. And I think when you have a person of the people, by the people, and for the people, someone who was born without civil rights, someone who grew up in poverty but had a role model, my mother and Dr. King, I've learned how to navigate adversity and I've achieved the American dream, and I want to share that with all of our citizens. And so I think that defines a difference between Dave Reichert and myself.
I asked Dave the same question. Would you campaign with the former President Donald Trump?
I paused just a little bit on that because I'm here to serve Washington and Washington citizens. It's not a political endeavor for me. It's not about politics. It's about putting people over politics. It's not to say that I don't support this or that or this person or that person. President Trump brought forward good policies in terms of border security, opportunity zones in minority communities, supporting Black education, bringing economic prosperity, energy independence. Those are things I support. I support also civility. I also support leading and leadership qualities, which is not to call names, which is not to label individuals or take the offensive when there's no need to take an offensive. So I am my own man. I am my own person. I am a faith-based person, which calls for love at all turns, and that's how I want to be defined. So I focus on Washington State and the citizens of our state. But I will campaign with leaders of our communities, Black, brown, and all. That's who I will campaign with to lead ourselves to equality and prosperity.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please.
The reason why this question will continue to come up is as you know this, that the former president is deeply unpopular in this state.
Yes.
In King County in 2020, he only won 22% of the vote, 38% of the state. He lost Snohomish County by almost 20 points, Pierce County by double digits. He presents a challenge for any Republican candidate on a statewide ticket. How do you possibly win a statewide office if you can't get over 40% in King County?
Oh no, it's doing what we've been doing for a year and a half. I interviewed the other day with a wonderful gentleman with a block media company, a wonderful company, and he first thing he said at the very beginning, the outset of our interview was, we've been following this man. Last year, over a year ago, he attended Emoja Fest, one of the oldest, longest going, 70 years, block celebrations and parades in Washington State. Why was I the only Republican candidate for governor to ever attend that? Why was I the only Republican candidate for governor to ever attend the first King County Juneteenth event ever? Well, that's wrong. So how do we win in those communities? We go to those communities. I come from those communities. It's not a matter of playing politics for me. It's a matter of engaging with the people that we hope to serve. And that's what, again, we have to focus on, coming together as a community, as a diverse community across the state, all cultures, to say, we want something better for our state. And the only way to get there is not to focus on who's running for president or the numbers or how many votes can we get from the black community, the white community, but something greater. Again, the votes from all community matter. Everyone has worth, everyone has value. And not everyone has that white picket fence story in their lives. Not everyone has had this pure life without fault. I'm representing everyone in this state. I'm proud to do so. And I hope that my life story can be an inspiration for others to say that if he can do it, I can do it. A child can look and say, how did he get from there to where he is today? I would be honored to be an inspiration to any citizen of the state, because I've had many that I have followed. As I said, my wife, Dr. King, and so many others.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but based on what you just said, I mean, I've heard people label you as the MAGA candidate.
Yeah.
That sounds like you're distancing yourself from the former president as you go on the campaign trail.
Yeah, it's not a distancing, it's a focus. And again, one has nothing to do with the other. I'm running for governor of Washington State, which has nothing to do with the president of the United States. We're in the northwest corner of the nation. Washington State is on the other side of the nation. That's the problem. We should be focusing on what's best for Washington and the citizens of Washington. So no distance intended. And I will say very clearly, and I was asked by another large media group, well, who are you voting for? And I said, President Donald Trump. Why? Because I like his policies. And I don't necessarily agree with his communication style or his leadership style. But border security, energy independence, all those things, yes. And when we look at what's been happening over the last handful of years with President Biden, if I have to choose between one or the other, well, there's my choice. But I've been honest about that. There's no distancing there. It's just simply being truthful into how I'm going to vote, and I share that. But where I support and what I support, which is Washington State and the citizens I hope to serve.
Okay, so the issues in Washington State, as you know, that are most important to people, at the top of that list is the homelessness crisis.
Yes.
That has been routinely over the last few years been the top issue for people in Washington State. I've seen you on your website, you've listed different ideas for tackling homelessness, yes, including declaring a state of emergency on public disorder which affects life, health, property, and the public peace.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, it's simply this. Under 43.06.10, the RCW, that gives the executive office, the governor, an opportunity to utilize those authorities to actually get something done. And that is to say, well, we have the engineers of the Washington National Guard. Why would we not consider clearing 10 acres of state land and bring that infrastructure, right, where we have cutting edge technology for field hospitals, and then bring health, mental health, because we're in a mental health crisis, as we know, closer than some. Treatment, drug treatment, consultation and support to those who are suffering, because I would argue the root cause of those folks living in the darkness of homelessness, drugs, addiction, and mental health. It's a crisis. We don't have the infrastructure, so why would we not use that? And then once we have that inpatient program, bring certifications and training programs once they're clean. And then when they graduate from the program, we reunite them with their families who have been loving them and missing them. I myself lost my nephew last year to fentanyl poisoning, and I would have done anything to get him back, but he was living in darkness and he was not accountable for his actions. He was trapped in that darkness. We know that. And when they go into transitional housing, they're doing so clean, and we partner with small businesses and so that they have a good paying job to keep them clean so that recidivism rates are lowered. This is a significant programmatic change for Washington State. And then we must move forward with rebuilding our mental health infrastructure and our drug treatment infrastructure and get a handle on this. My program is not going to cost billions, and as we're seeing, and it continues to grow out of control. So I think it's sound. It'll bring the solutions we need, and I think our citizens will support it.
Just help me clarify what you touched on there with the National Guard, because on the website it also says, I will activate our National Guard to bring forward immediate housing, physical, psychological, and dental health services, as you were just talking about.
Yes.
That will include alcohol and drug intervention and treatment. But I can see somebody pulling out of that saying, well, Semi's going to call for the National Guard to sweep up homeless people.
Oh no, thank you for that opportunity to clarify. Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. We're not going to have our National Guard soldiers in the streets or anything like that. It's to build the infrastructure, because our citizen soldiers, who are amazing, and airmen, that's what they do. 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summertime, we already have a budget dedicated to them coming to their bases and practicing their skills. And then in their occupation, they're mental health professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, they're drug treatment counselors. That's what they do, so they're the best of the best at what they do. Let's bring them, when they come for that weekend drill, to bring their services forward to help our brothers and sisters who are struggling and dying in the streets. That's what I mean. We're literally utilizing the assets in the budget that we already have, bringing that to bear to bring effective change and solutions, true compassion, to bring an end to this misery, and again, bring life back to those who are living into the darkness.
Help me out on another question, which may be the defining issue on a national level, but also in this state when it comes to the 2024 election, and that's abortion.
Yes.
I have talked to Dave Reichert about that there are going to be a lot of people that are mobilized to vote, just depending on how they feel about that issue. There's a question about states' rights. We've heard what former President Trump has said about it, but do you believe there should be a federal mandate on abortion?
No. No, I do not. I'm a constitutionalist, and so we default to the Constitution, and then the Constitution, the 10th Amendment, says that those rights not utilized by the federal government default to the state, and those not used by the state default to the citizenship. And I believe, under the Declaration in Article 1, Section 1 of our own Constitution of Washington State, that power is in fact inherent in the people, and that government derives their just powers from the consent of the governed. And it is government's job in Washington State to protect and maintain the individual rights of our citizens, to protect and to maintain their rights, not take their rights away. And so when you're thinking about Semi Bird's administration, I'm not here to take anyone's rights away. And under Article 3 of our own Constitution, it says that I have a legal obligation to enforce the laws of Washington State. And we have a law in Washington State. And citizens have voted on this over and over again. And as long as we have a law, I'm constitutionally obligated to enforce the law. There's nothing there about taking away anyone's constitutional or legal rights in this state. People need to understand that. So when you have any candidate talk about, I'm here to protect this and protect this, well, we should all be there to protect the rights of our citizens without equivocation.
So do you believe that abortion is settled in Washington State as law?
There is a law, 9.02.100.
And there's nothing that you would do to try and change that?
No. No, I mean, it's outside of my purview as governor. The governor has no authority to change law of Washington State. That should be set aside for our citizens and those elected legislatures. That's their job. But we have a law on the books. And until the law is changed, but the law is in the books.
On another issue, I went through your website, and I didn't see transportation necessarily highlighted, and that was 5, 6, 7 years ago. That was the top issue for people in Washington State. In Western Washington, a lot of people are concerned about the ferry system.
Absolutely.
There's no quick fix. So if you're elected, how would you fix the ferry system?
Oh, there's a lot to say, and boy, I'll be writing my solutions with actions on that. I've talked about it for over a year. And so we have about 15 out of 19 boats fully functional right now. And I say fully with caution. We need to immediately bring a resolution or solution to this, and that means marine diesel. Marine diesel is not the carbon producing vessels that it used to be days of old. We have the emission systems on these vessels as it is, and they are efficient, effective, and they're cost effective for our citizens. We have to think of the tax implications. Right now, think about how much we're paying in taxes. Every citizen, whether wealthy or living below the poverty line, it's too much. So the quickest way to bring a solution is marine diesel, so I support that. And get that done. And then let's start talking about the human resource aspect. We have attrition within our ranks. We don't have the talent, and every day we are losing people into retirement. Why? Well, because we have the mandates. And we lost a great deal of our workforce who said we're not going to get a vaccination. And that drove our staff away. So now we're trying to bring back staff. So recruitment, retention, and training is an issue that no one talks about. I have a background in that. I have a graduate degree in that, and I did that for a living. So we must speak to that. So we're going to bring training programs in. We're going to have a succession plan brought forth, and we're going to be able to bring that and maintain that tacit knowledge so that we have the talent ready to go, we have the vessels ready to go, and we're going to restore the efficiency, because we were once the most effective and efficient ferry system in the nation, because we're the largest ferry system in the nation. We need to bring that back.
And as far as another issue that came up during the GOP convention, voting on the platform, about the idea of abolishing vote by mail and going back to an old system. Do you believe in abolishing vote by mail?
I believe in election integrity. I believe that the most effective and efficient way to ensure election integrity is in-person voting. But when you bring in a solution of in-person voting, we must take into consideration our seniors. I talked to a friend the other day, and he says, my mother is 80 years old, and she'll get in line because she's a patriot, and she's old school like that. There's no reason for her to get in line at that age. So our seniors must be taken into consideration, and they should always have that option to mail in their ballot. The same thing with our veterans and our disabled citizens. They should always have that option. But for the rest of us, if it's the most safest, more effective, most secure way to ensure election integrity, which statistically, regardless of party, Democrat, Independent, Republican, everyone wants safe, secure elections. And in light of what happened last summer in King County elections with the swapping of servers, I think we should be looking towards options for election integrity. So that's what I believe. I also believe that you shouldn't make it automatic just because you get a driver's license that you're automatically put on voter registration unless you opt out, because a lot of people don't know that and they're not doing that. And we have people in those roles who shouldn't be in those roles. And we have a law that says you should clean the voter rolls, but it doesn't specify how often, and it doesn't identify, well, what is the penalty if you're not doing that? So there's a lot of work to be done in Washington State. And so I support a solution to move towards the most effective and secure way of ensuring our voter integrity.
There have been Republicans and Democrats who like this system in Washington State. It's worked just fine. Why change anything?
What I would say to this as governor, this is not a decision that I would make. This would be put to a vote. And I think the citizens of our state should vote on this. That is the best way to go, because we hear for the people. This is to serve our citizens. This is for our citizens. Voting is a civil liberty, a most precious civil liberty. So that's why, whether we have former governor candidate in Georgia who said our system on voting is corrupt and it's not fair and just, well, then we should ensure it so in Washington State. We should be the beacon of election integrity here in Washington State for not just Georgia, but all states. And so let's put it to a vote. Let's bring forward a solution that our citizens can vote on and be confident in our system. That's what I support.
Which would be, that vote would be done by mail, ironically. But
yeah.
Okay, so let's end with this. I asked Mark Mullett the same question. People believe polls. They don't want to believe polls. The polls are used in fundraising, however, and you and Mark in particular have continued to poll in the single digits. You obviously have wind in your sails, however, with the state GOP nomination.
Yeah.
But when you see these poll numbers, do you get discouraged at all by the single digit polling?
Not at all. I know research methodology at the doctoral level, and so I see the polls and I see them for what they are. The Echelon Insights poll, paid for by the PAC, ran by someone who's dead set on character assassinating me, and major donor, max donor to Dave Reichert. So, bias much? Yes, 100%. He paid for the poll. When you do sampling groups, where do you sample to get the effects that you want? That's how polling works, which is why people like Steve Gordon and his PAC will pay for a poll for their candidate. Who paid for the last Echelon Insights poll? Well, that was Dave Reichert's campaign. You'll see it, $30,000, and it's rightfully disclosed. So when you look at polls, I ask that citizens look at who does the polls and who sampled. Where's the sampling group? Where's the methodology? Consider that. I'm confident. And there's other polls too that you can look at and say, name brand recognition. You have two of the most, under those polls, leading candidates, if you will. High name brand recognition, but look at the likability or dislikability rating of those two individuals. They're known, and people are saying we want something different. That's where you have candidates like Mark Mullet and myself, that as we continue to get out there in the community, people more and more are coming towards us and saying, you are the refreshing difference that we have been waiting for. And here's something else that is just remarkable. In Spokane at that convention, why is it that we had a super majority representation, the largest number ever recorded in delegate history in this state, where we won that 72% super majority? And those are delegates from 39 counties all throughout the state of Washington, representing thousands of precincts, representing millions of voters. And we won that delegation vote by 72%. That is a number you can take to the bank, and that was not bought and paid for. That was a free citizen vote of the delegates.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
I think we covered a lot there.
Chris, I talk your ear off, brother.
I appreciate it.
I would stay with you guys all day long.